in your career?
Well, I started doing theater in high school and followed that with a 4-year degree at the University of Missouri at Columbia. And then I took a children's theater show out on the road for a year. And then I went back to graduate school in Illinois at Illinois State, and I got a master's degree in theater. And with that program was an internship at Manhattan Theater Club, which is off-Broadway and Broadway producing theater company. And I went for 6 months to work in their production office and to work on a show backstage, and I never left. So that turned into a lot of good connections. And New York is where eventually I had hoped to be. It wasn't my first dream, but I'd hoped someday I would get there, and it just sort of all fell into place.
So you talked about you went on a child theater thing. Could you kind of explain that a little bit more?
Sure. So like many of you, or, I did, we had people come in and put on productions for us in our grade schools, junior highs, or high schools as a part of a program. And my show was called Idiosyncrasies, and it was in 1983. So it was the very beginning of video games and kids sort of getting sucked into watching television and playing video games. And so this was a little bit of a cautionary tale done in a really fun way to say, kids, there's more to life than video games. So we did that for a year, touring around the country, where we brought the little set and we had 6 actors, and it was like a 30-minute
That sounds like do you think that was able to help you get kind of the connections that led to your current career?
It did. I'm gonna check my Wi-Fi because it looks like I'm unstable. So I apologize. Just hold on 1 second, and I am going to figure out if I can get back on better. I think it did. Ironically, I met somebody on that tour who I ended up working with in New York, who was New York based. I think it gave me some like confidence and the ability to know I could do the hard work. I'm not sure it was, there are always connections, just like in life, but I think my going back to graduate school and getting that internship in New York is what really sent me to New York. But I think everything I've done from high school on has built on getting me to where I am.
And so if a student was trying to go into the same like career you would, what would you kind of tell them to help them get there?
I think I would say, if you love the theater and it's what you really want to do, you should do everything you can, every project, if there's theater in your hometown, if there's theater at your church, if there's theater, at a community center, it's always worth saying yes and doing theater at any level, at any time, because all of those experiences, as I said, will give you confidence, will give you some skills, and you never know who you're going to meet along the way that might give you a hand up if they move to the next level, or if you move to the next level, you can say, I know would say you always say yes to any theater that's available to you. I went to a 4-year college, not a conservatory, but just a theater department in a college of arts and science or a college of fine arts. But I got a really well-rounded background, art history and regular history and literature, that I think gave me a good foundation to do theater. So I would say you don't necessarily have to go to theater and get a BFA, like get a very conservatory based degree, but that is a place where you can do hands-on theater. So a college degree is also a good way to meet people, get some confidence, and get some skills.
Yeah, and obviously that led to a pretty successful career. What is that kind of the day-to-day in that career?
Well, right now, a normal schedule for me, if I'm in rehearsal, is to be in the rehearsal room with actors and a director from about 10 o'clock in the morning till 6 o'clock at night. So I'll do a little bit of prep in the morning before the actors come, getting the room ready with presetting the props and making sure everything is ready for the rehearsal that day. And I might stay a little bit later than 6 o'clock to, again, get ready for the next day and tie up any loose ends and send emails. We do that 6 days a week. Our normal day off is Monday, so today is my day off. Today's the day you do everything else. You do your laundry, you go grocery shopping, you vacuum the house. So when I go into the theater, the day sort of flip-flops, and I would go into a rehearsal perhaps in the afternoon for some understudies at no earlier than about 1 o'clock. And a show starts anywhere between 7 and 8 o'clock, depending on what theater you're in.
Uh,
Oh,
what is- sorry. What are some of the pros and like what is your favorite part of your job?
My favorite part of the job is being a part of a production that I know is very meaningful and moving to an audience. Just to be a part of that is really, really special. And although no one sees what I do, like I'm not an actor, I'm not on stage, I know that the show functions because I do my job. And so that's my favorite part. Is just like an actor, I love to hear the applause at the end because I know we've gotten into the hearts of the audience.
Definitely. And it sounds like there was a lot of positives to this job, but what would you say some of the negatives are to the job?
I think the negatives are learning about how difficult the scheduling is. To have only one day off a week is not what most people think of as their life's work. I'm lucky that my husband is also in this business. He's also a stage manager on Broadway. So I didn't have somebody at home who was always wondering where I was, what my schedule was. He understood that, but you know, we raised 2 kids and we had a lot of babysitting hours because there are a lot of hours when we weren't home. My kids did get the plus of being able to come backstage and be backstage at a Broadway show, which was fun for them. But the hard part is the schedule. I think it's a little, you know, it's more grueling than a 9-to-5 job.
Yeah. So what are some like some of the plays that you've put on that are your favorites or the most memorable?
I have a couple. My very first Broadway show is very special because it was the first one I was able to do. And it's a play called Art, and it was a 3-person play. And it was had no intermission, and and it was a play that came over from London, and we brought some of the London actors and we put in some American actors, and I was able to go to London and rehearse the show with those American actors as we put our company together. And then the show is very sort of magical in that it evokes the old sort of mythic gods that might be around in our world. And so it just was really special because the production was able to, by the end, you really believed that perhaps there were, you know, more than just the people on stage. And so it was really moving and fun. And it had crazy things in it, like live chickens on stage that lived underneath a caravan, you know, an airstream. And we cooked on stage, and there was a fire, like it was around a campsite. So it had a lot of really crazy components, but things that made it really special.
Definitely. And it sounds like it has been a very successful career, but how would you define success?
Gosh, I think success is if you are feeling like what you're doing is successful to you. So I was lucky enough to move into the world of Broadway, so my successes are very public. You know, if a show is a big success, I get to say I'm a part of it. But I think also a show in which you feel like you've done the really good work of putting on what the playwright wrote on the page. And even if it might not be successful as far as a critic's review, or maybe it didn't sell as many tickets as you wish it would, you know, you have in your heart the success of knowing you've produced something that created the show on stage, and you put it together with a group of people, so that camaraderie.
Definitely. And did you like, what was your first job, and did you like learn something from this that made you want to go into this career specifically?
My first job was at McDonald's. So in a way, I will tell you yes. When I was 16, I worked at a McDonald's on Nolan Road in Independence, Missouri. And at that time, it was 1976, and women were not really taken as seriously in the workplace because they were not paid the same way men were paid, which is still the case. But in 1976, it was much more evident. And we had our reviews, and I was in the manager's office, and he said, I can only give you a nickel raise instead of a 10-cent raise an hour because you don't know how to run the grill and do one other task that only the men in the restaurant were trained to do. And I said, you can't discriminate against me. You've never trained me. You're keeping me from a full time, you know, from making the full amount of money I can make. And I quit that day. And I think it sort of gave me the idea that I was stepping into a world that wasn't always meant for women. It is now. There are actually more stage managers who are women on Broadway than men, but it wasn't that way when I began. And I think there are a lot of things in life that, you know, you can learn from your first experience. How were you treated as an employee? How do I want to treat the people who work under me? And do I want to make sure everybody is treated equitably? So I did learn something from my very first job at McDonald's.
Definitely. You talked about how earlier in your career there was a bit more discrimination towards women. How did you see this, and how did you overcome this?
Well, you know, I just kind of worked on the production manager, and I was his assistant, and he allowed me to move into the position with his help. And I think along the way, I just realized I had to just do my job and do it well, and let that be what I put forward, and say, I can do this job. And the times luckily sort of changed along with my career, which was nice.
Definitely. Would you like to share anything, like personally, before we conclude this?
Well, I can share a little tidbit from my experience at Truman High School in Independence, if you'd like that, because as I was thinking about this interview, I thought one of the things that made me know I wanted to do theater was the way that Mrs. Tucker, who ran our theater department, allowed everybody who wanted to be a part of the production in any way they could. So she allowed a very inclusive organization that you could just come in, come out, do it, you know, work hard, do whatever it is that you wanted to do. And one time, in my senior year, I was in the orchestra, and I'd been in the theater the whole time. And so I wasn't going to work backstage, or be on stage. And I wanted to play in the orchestra, but I also wanted to have something to do with the show. And she very wisely allowed me to be, I think, the makeup designer. So I could sort of do it before the show, and then I could go to the pit and play in the orchestra. And I think that really allowed me to know that you can be a part of theater in little bits or in big parts. And she really set that up for me, you know, allowing me to be a part of every show I wanted to be a part of.
All right, well, thank you so much for your interest and help in doing this. And